Everyone has a story. Stories have power. They help us understand. Jessop's Journal is a collection of powerful, positive, and inspirational stories. It's time for Jessop's Journal.
Hi, this is Doug Jessop. Welcome to this episode of Jessop's Journal, where we share powerful, positive, and inspirational stories. I'm in front of the Vietnam Veteran Memorial Wall, not in Washington, D.C., but actually in Layton, Utah. This is a special episode where I'm going to feature 6 different people, but it's the story that's behind the story that's important, and we'll hear that later. Up first, medic Randy Milliken. Hi, this is Doug Jessop. Welcome to this episode of Family Heritage Stories, where we get to preserve stories. And today, this guy has got one heck of a story, Randy Milliken. Randy, thank you for coming on today. Now, Randy, let's get real. You got the vest, you got the hat. There's obviously some kind of story behind this. And what's really cool is that people may not realize is that there's a group of you that came here today to be interviewed. And I gotta ask the first question is, what in the world's the 159th Dustoff?
The 159th Dustoff was a unit of the U.S. Army that served in Vietnam. And our primary mission was to rescue the wounded, most often under fire. And we were unarmed, had no weapons at all. And we rescued American, Vietnamese civilians, enemy forces, Philippines, whoever called, we went to their aid.
Now, wait a second. You just said something that I was not aware of. Okay, you're saying you went into a territory, okay, where there were wounded people, and
freshly
wounded people, and you were not armed?
We were not. We had personal sidearms, but we didn't have. There, if I may, there was a similar unit, and it's called Evac, and that was a unit that was organic to an infantry division. For example, the 101st Airborne, 1st Cavalry Division. They only picked up their own people from their battles that they were involved in, but they each had 2 M60 machine guns. And we picked up, as I said earlier, not exclusively, we picked up anyone that needed to be rescued. And we figured we could get a couple, 3 more patients without having the machine guns if we had the room to put the patients. Yeah. So that was the way we approached all our missions.
How did you end up getting into this unit and into the war itself?
Well, I wish I could show you. There's a famous Life magazine photograph that made the cover, and it's a bunch of I believe it's Marines being evacuated atop of armored personnel carrier, and they're all wounded. And there's one guy there holding this bottle of IV fluid for a guy that's covered in bandages. And I'm just out of high school, and for some reason that photograph really spoke to me down deep. So I joined the Army and told them the only way I would want to be in the Army is if I could be a medic, if I could be that guy. And luckily I had the aptitude for it and took the training, became a medic. There were guys on helicopters with the red crosses on the side, and they were bringing these guys, these severely wounded men, into the hospitals. And they were getting them there alive for the surgeons to work on. And I decided that's what I wanted to do. So once my 1-year tour of obligation in Vietnam was over, I signed up for a second one if they would promise me I could do that. And a couple of snafus and a little red tape, but I finally got there. And I'm so proud today that I did that because of my friends and brothers you're going to meet and talk to, I know. And you'll understand why I say we're all the same guy. We're all made of the same thing. And we all have the same goal, and that's to help people in need.
Today's episode of Jessop's Journal features 6 members of the 159th Dustoff unit, and they served in Vietnam. They're a medical evac group. The person that put it together is this lady right here, Maura. We're going to hear from her now.
Well, I told you on the phone, it's priceless. It's priceless to me because when I was first sitting with the guys listening to their stories, it's something you just can't get back. And there's a lot of stories I wish I would have had recorded from my dad, my mom, my grandparents. So at least we were able to get these stories recorded. And to have them videoed and digitized is key, because the younger generation, you know, sitting with my nephews, doing homework with them over COVID, they weren't looking at books, they were looking at screens, and they can look at this on a screen.
Everyone has a story. This is Doug Jessop. It would be my honor to help you tell your family heritage story. Here's how it works. We'll schedule a professional interview at the same studio I do my TV show. We already have the broadcast cameras, audio, and lighting set up to ensure quality control. All you need to do is come to our Salt Lake City studio and we'll do the rest. Our professional editing staff will take out bloopers and add your pictures to create a private digital video for you to keep. Go to familyheritagestories.com for pricing and to schedule your interview. I was honored to interview 6 members of the 159th Dustoff. 2 of them got Purple Hearts, including this guy, Jim Beeson.
Well, I was an aircraft commander, and I had my roommate was a warrant officer. So we were called in there to evacuate a Vietnamese wounded, and we went into the LZ, the landing zone, and as we were hovering down in, because it was taller grass and trees, and I had to kind of maneuver through the trees to get into it, we were taking fire. Well, we were used to taking fire, which basically is a ding, zing, zing. You got a 1/4 inch of metal between you and the bullet, and we frequently did that. But this time we hit a high caliber, a 50 caliber type round.
Whoa.
And when we hit the aircraft, what I remember most was the smell of cordite, very much the smell of cordite, and everything turned just very slow motion. It just went into pure slow motion. Like the movies, you know, went into slow motion, honest to goodness. The round came through the bottom of the aircraft, we had metal seats we were sitting on, hit the pilot's, Eddie's, seat, shredded, went through the console, which is between us, which is all the radios, knocked all the radios out, came up through and through my leg, because I was on the left-hand side, the aircraft commander. And so we didn't have a pilot any longer because he was very injured. And we had to pull the back of the seat out and pull him back and back. And then the policy was always, when something like that happened, these seats had 2 little pins on them. You pull the pins, they fall backwards, and you pull the person out. And then the crew chief, because the medic was needed to take care of the wounded, the crew chief would get up in there to balance the aircraft. And we trained our crew chiefs to fly straight and level. They couldn't necessarily land or take off, but they could fly straight and level. So they were kind of a secondary, a 3rd person on board to help us out there. I remember very distinctly that I looked up and my right leg was, instead of being on the pedals, it was up on the console. And there was a hole in my flight suit. I remember that. And I remember grabbing my leg and putting it back down on the pedals, and all this is going on in less than a couple of seconds. And I couldn't control the aircraft very well, so I figured I could either crash there where they were still fighting, and we were about 50 feet off the ground, or I could pull myself back out of there. And the kind of our policy is, if both people are hit, you get the aircraft out and get yourself out of there, and then we'll get another aircraft come in, because they're not going to help you. So I got the aircraft out of the LZ and was trying to head back to the hospital, and and I couldn't talk to anybody because my radios were gone, except I had a Fox Mile, which is an FM radio, so I could talk to the gunships that were around us. So one of them followed us back, and I couldn't go more than 30 knots, which is pretty slow, and I couldn't fly any more than treetop, because every time I tried to go up, I increased the vibration of the aircraft. As it turns out, the bullet not only done all that damage, but it had gone through the blade, one of the blades.
Oh.
And the blade has a metal part, and then it has a honeycomb part. That's called a spur. And it split the spurs, so now instead of having 2 blades, I had 3, essentially. So the aircraft was shaking up and down where you couldn't see anything, and I finally put it down in the field there, And Connie and his crew came out and got us out of there.
What would it mean to you to have a video of your mom, dad, grandma, or grandpa telling their story? This is Doug Jessop. It would be my honor to help share their story with a private in-studio interview with a video for you to keep. Go to familyheritagestories.com for pricing and to schedule your interview. Every member of the 159th Dustoff served over 1,000 missions in Vietnam, and they saved over 3,000 lives. Here's the story from Donald Cavaney. So what's Dustoff mean to you?
What's really interesting is the way people talk about Dustoff. Medevac is specific to the 1st Cav, and they have 50 cal machine guns on their doors. And people would say, well, what's the difference? And they said, well, 1st Cav has the guns, Dustoff has the balls. Because we didn't have guns on the side, because we picked up everybody, good people, bad people, civilians, and we were specifically assigned to the 25th Infantry Division in Cu Chi.
Do you remember the first time you went out and picked some patients up?
Yeah, and well, the one that I remember the most is that, of course, when you get in the country, you get a weapon, a pistol, an M16, and whatever, and you're married to it. I mean, that's your live and die.
Right.
And my first time to go on a field standby to Tain In, I got in the aircraft and we were just getting ready to go up, and they said, oh, there's some transfers from the hospital there in Cu Chi to Saigon. So we had to go, we had to go back to the hospital, pick up these litter patients, take them to Saigon, and then go on to Tain In. Well, when I got to Tain In, my weapons were gone.
Oh dear.
I know. And so what had happened, what I surmised, is that the CIDGs, which were the mercenaries that fought for Vietnam, they owned their own weapons, and so they couldn't be separated from them. And we think that when we landed at the hospital in Saigon, that they thought my weapons, which were under my seat, belonged to the CIDG. And so they took them and put them back in the hospital. So when I got to Tain In, I didn't have a weapon. But then I thought that if I ever get shot down, I'm not going to have time to use them anyway. So I never replaced them. And thank goodness for Jim, Maura's husband, being the supply officer. The next time we had a helicopter that got shot down, my weapons were on it, because you could combat lost them without doing all the paperwork.
Okay. My Year in the Company of Heroes. It's a book compiled by the members of the 159th Dustoff. Here's the story from a pilot by the name of Chris Crowley.
Dustoff aircraft are unarmed. They don't have machine gunners. Their sole purpose is to get as many people out and rescue anyone, whether they're the enemy or pregnant mothers or children or American soldiers, out, and no matter what the circumstances are.
Is there a chapter that talks about you?
There is.
Tell me about your chapter.
My chapter is an amalgam of things, including some humor and some not so humorous things.
Can you share some of that?
Sure. We are we're picking up some nurses and some doctors to make a routine transfer of personnel from one hospital to another. And this particular day, we picked up 2 nurses. And we're just flying off, taking them up to the new hospital, and sure enough, there's a Mayday call. It's a light observation helicopter saying, Mayday, 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 we're going down. They give their coordinates, and that's it. So we're heading directly in that direction. So we see a small fire support base. We drop off the nurses. The nurses with a young American lieutenant go up to the top of the tower because they're going to be able to see us. As we're flying out, this is all John Wayne type thing, is why it's kind of humorous. A flight of F-105s hear what happened, say, we'll cover you going in. There's no other cover on the ground. So they're going in and they're dropping their bombs, and we go in and we see them right away. We get them out without incident, without taking any fire, and we're flying back to get the nurses to pick them up. In the meantime, both of them are covered in JP4, so their private parts are burning like crazy. And they're yelling and they rip off their clothes. We land at the fire support base. The nurses are coming here. These guys don't see the nurses. They run and they jump into a bomb crater full of green slime water to alleviate things. And as they're coming back, they encounter the nurses. So they're running elbows akimbo, bow-legged back to the aircraft. And then we take the nurses back. Nurses never go on hot missions, and we get back to the hospital where we're taking them. And the main thing about that story is, even though there's humor to it, these nurses just out of college and nursing school have no idea what they're going to be encountering day after day. So we get there, and one of them comes up to the window and says, "Is every day like this?" And then I say, little would she know what she's going to be encountering.
Yeah.
So that's part of the chapter.
So was every day like that day?
Every day was different.
Yeah.
And why I love the job, for me, I felt born to do it. It's what I was just driven to do it. We were busy all the time, so you didn't sit around wondering or worrying about things. You just got the job done. Mm-hmm. And there's a certain exhilaration being on the edge, putting it all out there and being able. You don't think about it in terms of heroism at the time, but when you look back after 50 years, there is a sense of pride.
Everyone has a story. Have you told your story? This is Doug Jessop. It would be my honor to help you tell your story with a private in-studio interview with a video for you to keep. Go to FamilyHeritageStories.com for pricing and to schedule your interview. Let's face it, the way that Vietnam veterans were welcomed home is a lot different than they are today. This next person should know, Mr. Tom Landis. How did your military experience translate into later life?
Actually, my military experience went into later life.
Oh, really? Tell me.
I retired at age 60 from the Army.
Wow.
Yeah. My career didn't take me around as much as some because I wasn't always on active duty, and most of my active duty time was as a member of the Colorado National Guard. I was one of the full-time training cadre, and my job was to train and evaluate pilots for the unit. So my first assignment was in Vietnam. My last one was in Iraq. I was asked to speak at a Armed Forces Day gathering one time, and I agonized, what am I going to talk about? And I put together a speech about the comparisons, the differences that I experienced between Vietnam and Iraq. And so that's what my chapter is about.
Okay.
Is some of the differences I alluded to a little bit. But one thing I did want to put in there, and actually my wife wrote a chapter.
Oh, wow.
And we both thought it was important to contrast the way we were treated coming home from Vietnam and the way we were treated coming home from Iraq. So.
Tender. Purple Heart.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
Can be. Mine weren't.
Well, unless you're Forrest Gump and you got shot in the butt. I don't know what happened.
I got shot in the butt.
Serious?
No. Fortunately, I sat in an armored seat, so it missed my butt, but it hit me in the back of the leg.
Still, that's got to
But my dad always said, Tom got hit in the butt. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It's attached. I think it's okay.
I was flying with Well, with Con Graff that you interviewed also. Con and I were flying together, and we landed to pick up one wounded soldier in an infantry platoon. While they were loading the casualty on board, a mortar round landed right next to us.
Whoa.
And wounded 4 more, including platoon leader and me. I had, it's the first time I got hit. I also got hit a second time, but the first time, and, I felt an impact in my leg. Well, I had always heard it doesn't really hurt, and it didn't. So I didn't know how bad it was. Okay, it didn't hurt. It was just like somebody punched me in the leg. So I reached down back of my leg. It's all still there, but it was kind of bloody. So I pulled my hand up, and there's blood all over my glove. One of the fragments from the mortar cut my communications. I couldn't talk to Con.
Uh-oh.
So I punched him in the shoulder. I held my hand up to show him I'd been hit. So we eventually got out of there, got back to the hospital. We unloaded our patients. I knew I wasn't, or I didn't think I was hurt very badly. Meanwhile, Con had radioed in that I got hit in the hand because he saw the blood on my hand. And everybody comes out to help us out of the helicopter, and I was fine. But yeah, in fact, that little piece of metal's still in there.
Really?
Yeah, I had to bring a souvenir home.
Yeah, well. Does it set off the, alarm at the
No,
airport?
it's about the size of a pencil lead.
Okay. But still not fun.
Well, the better one was when I got wounded a second time, which was also a minor wound.
Okay, tell me.
I had in my pocket of the pants of my flight suit, I had the core of an armor-piercing round that had hit my helicopter and gone into the oil cooler and lodged.
Okay.
And I pulled that out, and I used to carry it around in my pocket. So when I got hit in the other leg, go into the hospital, and they said, well, I guess we should x-ray that. I said, sure. And I knew it was really a superficial wound, but I start to take my pants down for the x-ray, and he said, that's all right, we'll just leave your pants on. We can x-ray through that. Takes the x-ray. I'm waiting around for a little while, and he comes out, and he said, did you walk in here? I said, yeah. He said, you've got a bullet in your leg. It was the bud in my pocket. I said, oh, you mean this?
Oh, man. So it was, okay, it was still loose. Okay, just making sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, see, there's a fun souvenir story.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Well, I don't still have that one. Yeah, actually I do.
Okay. Something happens when you serve together. Each one of these gentlemen has a mutual respect for each other. And yeah, I'll say it, love. Up next, Conrad Graff. With me today, Conrad Graff. Conrad, thanks for coming on today. I notice you've got, the jacket and the hat, and we've been talking with a lot of guys, and so obviously there's a reason. And I got asked, the first question, you probably get asked a lot. Why in the world is your helicopter upside down?
They tease me that that's the way I used to fly.
Oh, okay, so you're a pilot.
Yes.
Oh, well, pilots are a different breed, okay.
First year, everybody was going to Vietnam. They come back, usually an instructor role, and then the third year you would go back to Vietnam. In about July, they came to me and said, came to all of us, said if you extend your tour 6 months, we'll give you a 30-day leave, and you come back and do 6 months, and we'll approve your request for transfer to Dustoff. So I did. And about October, November, the orders came through, and I was assigned to the parent unit of the 159th for probably till February of 1970.
So what was the difference as a pilot between Dustoff and the other missions that you had done?
Well, we were all flying the Huey. Dustoff was patient recovery, transport out of the field, in between hospitals. We did ash and trash. We did all kinds of missions. There was a rotational, one day you're first up, the next day you're second up. I don't remember how it all worked. But everybody took a shot at this tough stuff and the easy, we got our easy stuff as well. In the Air Cav Squadron, you might be a single ship, you might be in a formation of 20 helicopters, you might be inserting, extracting troops, you might be doing resupplies. We certainly did some medevac work in all of that. It was endless. Whatever you could imagine they could use a helicopter for, we'd get the mission and off we go.
Why did you want to transfer?
It seemed like the place for the most good. It seemed like the opportunity to be with people that you just admired when you saw what they were doing and how they were doing it. We had casualties in the Air Cav Squadron. Anytime you get involved with something like that, you can't help but be touched and moved.
Right. Talking about that, you've got some crosses and some names on your vest.
These are gentlemen that served before I got to the unit, but their stories were shared immediately with me, and it's an honor to wear them.
So how did your experience in Vietnam translate to later life?
Yeah, I had a tough time coming out of the military and back into the civilian world, and I did fine. It was probably 10 years of way too much alcohol and broken relationships. And then one day you realize that this day is a gift and you do something. I loved flying. I always have. And I started flying again. And I retired as a pilot. That's a good thing.
Really?
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah. The last words that my grandfather said were, "Please remember me." This is Doug Jessop. It would be my honor to help you share your story with a private in-studio interview with a video for you to keep. Go to FamilyHeritageStories.com for pricing and to schedule your interview.
What makes you smile? Spry Natural Xylitol Gum makes me smile. I think it might help you too.
The importance of saving stories from veterans cannot be understated. It's been my honor to be able to interview these folks, members of the 159th Dustoff in Vietnam. If you're a veteran that would like to have your story remembered, go to FamilyHeritageStories.com for details and to schedule your interview. Here's the thing I want everybody to remember. You people right out there, if you're a veteran or not, anybody, everybody, everyone has a story. Stories have power. They help us understand each other. With another entry in Jessop's Journal, I'm Doug Jessop.